Welcome to the ninth EAL Quality Mark webinar. We've got two wonderful schools to talk to you today, and we've also got news of an exciting new project that will create new resources for advanced EAL learners. My name is Graham Smith. I run the EAL Academy. I'm just going to say a little bit about the Quality Mark process before handing over to our first speaker. Okay, so just what's the EAL Quality Mark? How did it start? It started because we were working with a local authority which didn't know which of its schools were good at EAL. So we devised a tool to find out. Um, and 8 years on, lots of people have now done the EAL Quality Mark. It's a self-assessment tool. So it helps you judge what you can do. It exists in both UK and international school versions. It has sections looking at leadership and management, teaching and learning, parents and community. There are 22 criteria, 22 criteria at bronze, silver and gold level. 10 of them are about teaching and learning, 7 about leadership and management, 5 about parents and community. You self-assess and then we come and visit and talk to staff, parents and pupils, do a short learning walk, have a conversation about the self-assessment and give you some feedback and a decision. You get a certificate and a logo. You write a blog about you if you get the gold award, and we also invite you here to speak. So I'm delighted to hand you over to a very recent winner of the EAL Quality Mark Gold Award, and the very first school that is a prep school with a boarding department to win this gold award. Sarah, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Graham, for the introduction and for having me here today. I'm very excited. I'll share my screen. I believe I am sharing my screen. Is that right, Graham? Can you confirm?
Yep, that's good.
Yeah. Amazing. So St Andrew's Prep is a medium-sized co-educational day and boarding IAPS prep school with around 400 pupils aged from 9 months to 13 years. Around 10% of our pupils are multilingual learners, which may sound like a small percentage, but we have more than 21, perhaps more 22, 23 perhaps, languages represented by our multilingual pupils and teachers like myself. I've been part of the school community for about 10 years, and I'm so proud of how welcoming and nurturing the school is. It really is a fantastic place for international pupils and for teachers like myself, having moved from different countries, and we're so proud to call it home. St Andrews actually was founded as a boarding house in 1877, so nearly 150 years of history. We will be celebrating in 2 years' time. There is capacity. The boarding house has got capacity of up to 60 pupils at any one time. And we're very, very lucky to have and to maintain a very healthy cultural balance. We cater for children that come from such different nationalities, different countries. But also, obviously, we have got a few English pupils that decide to come and stay with us. And it's very interesting because most of our boarders are actually EAL pupils. Overseas pupils are encouraged to speak in English. It's an English-speaking house. Obviously, most of them come to England because the parents want them to learn the language and to speak it and to practice it. But we also encourage them to speak in their first languages. We want them to be proud of their linguistic inheritance and culture too. Most of them become language ambassadors for the school, and they love representing their language and they like teaching it to others. So we've got a beautiful program that I'm going to talk about in a minute. We were awarded our gold EAL quality mark in January, and we're so proud to be the first prep school with a boarding house to achieve this accolade. The EAL Academy handbook and Graham's help have helped us stand out amongst other prep schools. And the EAL department was highly praised by the inspectors during the last ISI inspection. So we're really, really pleased. And they were very impressed as well with what we have got in place for our overseas pupils. I'm the head of the EAL department, so I'm really, really proud. Obviously, I'm an EAL pupil myself. So I'm so super excited about what we do at school. So some things that we have become better at since we've become involved with the EAL Academy are, for example, we've got a better buddy system in place now. So when a child joins us, they have 1, 2, or up to 3 buddies, and they receive a booklet and a badge that they keep for about 2 weeks, and they have got to tick the boxes, and they've got some responsibilities, and they've got to show them around school and introduce them to relevant members of staff, etc. So it's a 2-3 maximum week program where they're involved, and then they get to become familiar with the school. And it's really lovely, and they're really proud of being buddies. It's a lovely thing. We have also got better at gathering our pupils' insights, and we're using questionnaires that are inspired by Graham's ones and the EAO handbook. And the children may do them on their iPads, like you can see on one of the photos, or otherwise on a piece of paper as well. We have got both formats. But the year 7s and the year 8s have got their own, the school iPads that they are given at the beginning of the year. So they use them to do most tasks. We are also trying really hard to improve the parental involvement. We've also always been really good. Like Talk Education in 2023 said the parents' body is very supportive, and the school embraces them as part of the family, and this is so true. It's a bit trickier for parents that don't live in England, obviously. But we have got very open communication with them. We offer Zoom calls and Skype and Teams meetings all the time so that they can feel part of the community as well, as much as possible. We have also improved, I think, the way in which we track pupils' progress, also the way that we set their targets, and also the way that we get feedback from teachers, and then we use that feedback to inform our decisions. So what we have created our own document, but we use the Bell Foundation assessment framework as well to generate targets to guide this process. So the Bell Foundation and the EAL Academy have been instrumental in how we run the department these days. And at the beginning of each term, all pupils are assessed in English proficiency between A and E. After a couple of weeks, the teachers then inform me of each of the pupils' in-class performance, and then I decide on the personalized targets for each pupil. So they are different for each child. The child becomes aware of their targets for the term, and the teachers are also aware of each pupil's targets. So it's really interesting how the children are taking more responsibility for their own learning, and it's not just the teacher now these days, putting the information in the children's heads. So it's really, really impressive. In the last few years, I have put together more than 40 pages of different strategies for teachers to support multilingual pupils inside and outside the classroom. And I've created documents for specific departments to help them understand the needs of our EAO pupils. And I think this is something that Graham really liked is how the EAL department has got things in place for different departments, not just uh, to help them with their English, but also in each department has got their different issues, different things that they need to help the EAL pupils with. So, for example, we are in the cricket season; is the summer term now. So, a lot of our EAL pupils will have never heard of cricket, will have never played the game, and they play matches like everybody else. So every Wednesday, today is Wednesday, so all of the children are outside on the field playing matches, and some of them obviously become very anxious because they've never played these games, these sports. So the EAL department makes sure that the children and their families understand the sports that they are going to play, the rules, and yeah, I think we try and make it so that they are really excited about learning new sports rather than it being a daunting experience for them. So yeah, um, Graham also asked me to share how I convince my audience and reach my audience and convince the teachers to do the right thing. But it's not just one thing, like it's many things, and it would take us more than an hour to go through all of the things that we do at school to share the information and how we reach the audience. But a few of the things that I wanted to perhaps talk about is weekly snippets. So every week, I share a PowerPoint presentation. I put a new slide on a PowerPoint presentation and I share with all the school staff, all the members of staff. And then I inform them of different things. It might be something that they need to be aware of that week. It might be, I don't know, something that is relevant to the EAL pupils or how strategies or a new AI powered tool that will help geography, history, or help the EAL pupils in the classroom. The teachers are really grateful for the snippets. I think it's a very popular it is something really popular because it's a weekly thing that we do. So what happens is normally during inset days at school, we overload teachers with information, and sometimes, although I do inset day talks, I find that the weekly snippets has got a bit more of power because it's just a little bit of information every week rather than I talk to them for a whole hour about something and then they go and forget about it. But I also offer very kind reminders during staff meetings. I produce Think of Me Too posters where every 2 weeks I'll talk about, during the staff meetings, I'll talk about a different child, their needs, where they come from. And I remind teachers the strategies that are suggested for that particular child. We also have got a language ambassador program. Like I said, most of the boarders are part of this program. But then we have got a lot of they students that are part of the language ambassador program. And we do different activities around school to basically help them take pride in their inheritance and cultural background and share it with the rest of the world and the rest of the school. So it's really sweet. And then I also like doing displays around school, just to remind everyone that St Andrews is very rich in the multicultural sense, and yeah, it's lovely, and we need to be proud of what we multilingual members of the community bring to the school. So I think I've covered everything, but if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer at the end.
Thank you very much. It was reminded me of what a joy it was to be in your school, to see all those things happening.
Oh, thank you.
It was reminded me of just how good it was, what I saw when I came to visit. I may, when we get to the questions, ask you something, say a bit more about the boarding house.
Yeah.
And the opportunities it offers, which had just not occurred to me before. But you go out of your way to make the most of that. Okay, I said if people have got questions, put them in the chat and we'll try and answer them all at the end. If we can move on now to our next speaker, who is Professor Gail Forey from University of Bath. When we talk about EAL, lots of people worry understandably about what do I do with a new arrival? And sometimes we don't think about the whole spectrum. And the project that Gail is going to talk about deals to a significant extent with pupils at the other end of the spectrum. So they're pupils who can swear perfectly in English, but can they actually write the kind of academic stuff that they need to do in high stakes exams? Can they really show how clever they are on their understanding with the full range of language that you need to use? They're often neglected because they get on fine, but they could get on even better if we looked at all of their needs. So over to you, Gail.
Thanks for inviting me, Graham. Everybody can see my slides? Yeah. Just going to move the screen so I'm looking at the camera, not looking at the other. We'll put that on PowerPoint. So, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about the other end of the spectrum and writing and how this is relevant for EAL learners as well as all learners in secondary school. So I'm leading a project about disciplinary literacy, which is based on work that has happened before, the British Academic Written English Corpus, which looked at university writing, and we're looking at secondary school writing. So the BORS project, it's a UKRI ESRC, which is all acronyms, but it's funded by the government, and we got close to £1 million to do this project. So I'm leading it with a number of other people. Reka, Dana and David and I are all at the University of Bath, and then Helen Hampford, who works with Graham at EAL Academy and at Wolverhampton City College, and Natalie Cheers, who's head of international students at Bath Royal High School for Girls, and then Lee McCallum's at Edinburgh. So it's a team meeting, and we have an amazing advisory team as well. So it's been really documented in the Education Endowment Fund and elsewhere that young people who leave school without good literacy skills are held back at every stage of their career, and that by attending to those literacy demands, we can increase their chances of success. So the BORS project is based around this premise, but focusing specifically on writing in the exam years. So we know that language is a key resource for accessing and displaying knowledge. We know that secondary school exams are very high stakes. So we're looking at IGCSE, GCSE, A-level, and the International Baccalaureate. So from the key stage 5, 4 and 5. And we know that in all exams, even performance-based exams, so in sports science or dance or art, that a key factor, even though they're performance-based and like many other subjects, a key factor to performing well is writing well, writing coherently and convincingly within a discipline. And that disciplinary literacy is fundamental to success in schools. So disciplinary literacy, we can look at a definition of it, and our working definition is learning how to read, think about, write, and communicate and use information like each discipline's expert. So it's learning how to talk like a scientist, write like a scientist, talk like an artist, and write like an artist. And to do this convincingly, you need to understand how power words change and power grammar changes and power composition changes. The types of texts that are key in science are sometimes very different from the type of texts that are key in A-level art. So looking and understanding what that means within secondary school across the curriculum, and how we make meaning in different disciplines are the key features that we're really interested in looking at our project. With help from schools, we're aiming to collect practice written text and build up a corpus. A corpus is just a large data set that we can then explore and mine. So if you think of it like just Google is a big data set of what's available out there and how you can mine it to look at patterns. So we're going to build the first corpus of disciplinary literacy writing in the exam years in order to develop an online open access resource for teachers and learners and parents. And we're going to use a genre-based and corpus-based analysis, so using systemic functional linguistics and corpus linguistics to look at the text and develop resources. And then this can also be a research database, so we can look at in geography how a geographer needs to write for GCSE or IGCSE and what the writing demands and developments are when they go into A level. And then the Ball corpus, which is currently at developed by Coventry University, you can look at what they need to do at university level as well. So disciplinary literacy and corpus is kind of like the area of our study where we're going to develop this specialized corpus where it's going to be tagged for the discipline, the exam board, the grade, and other data behind the set so that you can search for it and look at specific disciplines, specific language patterns, specific uses and resources across the curriculum. So that's our aim at the end. So we can look at some examples of corpus-based pedagogy where they've developed keywords. So you can take A-level science texts and you can develop it, you can link that up with the British National Corpus and you can see what are keywords in science compared to just a general corpus of English. So this is from the work of Green and Lambert, where they looked at biology, chemistry, economics, and geography, and they developed a keyword search, which is essential for teaching and learning, because some words may have different meanings in different disciplines. And for EAL learners, it's really key to understand the vocabulary and the meanings that are made through those choices. Some work we did with Helen Hanford at school in Bristol, where we can see that when they took a whole school approach to focus on language and literacy, where the school had 54% of the learners were EAL learners, we can see that when they focused on language and literacy, the exam results in science increased, not just the students that were getting their A star to C, but the A star and A students increased quite dramatically across the school for GCSE. I think the results for PE were even more surprising and convincing in that before the PE teacher taught the students how to write like sports scientists, the students were only 14 and 35% of the students were getting a pass mark at GCSE PE. Then when the PE teacher taught them how to write like sports scientists, the pass mark increased to 61%. And then the last time where it was ABC for GCSE in 2017, 95% of students got a pass mark, which is quite staggering when you think of especially disciplines like PE, where students don't see themselves as being academically very capable, choose PE because they feel that they can perform on the sports pitch or as an athlete, but then they have to come back and write, and the writing part of it has really is key to the success, not just the performance. And I've published this with my colleague Eric, looking at PE in particular. So what does participation involve? So being part of the project doesn't necessarily involve any extra work for students because it's part of their GCSE preparation. And we're asking teachers to collect the long answers. So the 6 points and 12 points, 15, 20 points in different disciplines, the long answers that are more than a paragraph long, which then we will help teachers copy and anonymize this texts, and then we'll upload the text from geography at Eastbourne We'll upload those into a folder online and share. Then we'll download them, and if the student's handwritten, we will digitize those and we'll make those available. So it's not an awful lot of work for the school, but it does involve getting consent from parents and students and teachers, but we will provide some support as part of the project for this. So this is just an example of some of the resources that we aim to develop on our website. So we can see that in biology, if we look at this is just some from our pilot study where we looked at biology, history, and geography, and we can see that the exams were requiring students to write different types of texts, so informing or descriptive or classifying reports or procedural reports or sequential explanations or evaluating expositions and discussions. Whereas in geography, they had short and long answers, and their kind of text that were being asked in geography GCSE was informing, so descriptive and classifying reports, procedural, sequential explanations, and they also had to do evaluating, exposition and discussion. And then if we look at history, there were fewer questions, and they had source texts, and the main types of text that students are asked to write in history was report, a descriptive report, and argumentative, exposition and discussion texts in GCSE history. So we can see, even if we look at the exam questions, that the demands on the students are very, very different. We can see also, based on what we looked at in the exam questions, that explain can have lots of different meanings. So if we talk about teaching command words and the meaning of command words, that in biology, we've got explain why, explain how, and sometimes explain the meaning of the term. So the whole kind of notion of a command word and what a command word means it varies differently. So if we look in history, there's a very different use of explain. So even if we're teaching our students how to engage with the command term explain, that there are disciplinary differences in the way that explain is used in different exams across the curriculum. So these are just some of the things that we're hoping to uncover in a lot more detail. We can look at particular words with the corpus. We had a very small pilot, we looked at one of the teachers that we were working with on our pilot talked about the word property. And so we did based on the small corpus we looked at property in biology and how property associated with other words such as show, change, structure, antihypertensive, similar chemical. But the term property in history actually associates with other words. So the term property in history associates or collocates with confiscate, record, tenement, divide, American, and church. So we can see that particular words in different disciplines hold particular meaning-making resources. And then if you can compare that to the British National Corpus, general use corpus, property has very, very different meanings in general terms. So what we're interested in looking at is mapping out the patterns of words in different disciplines. We're also hoping to take some short answer texts and demonstrate how they make meaning across a text. So we can see that we're going to annotate some texts, and we can see this one from biology, which is about how does the eye work, that the students have had to write. So this is just a model answer, but we can see there's a clear organization in what we're expecting students to write within biology. And we can take this and actually look at how the information flows from what comes at the end of the sentence to what comes at the beginning of the sentence, because quite often EAL learners, when they come to the UK, they've been taught to do firstly, secondly, thirdly, fourthly, but actually in English, cohesion is the relationship between the clauses and what comes at the beginning of the clause and at the end of the clause. And we can see here that there's a very clear pattern that makes this cohesive without necessarily having firstly, secondly, thirdly, fourthly. So we're trying to, on our website, we're going to map some of these cohesive devices out for learners. And I think our key aim is to get disciplinary literacy, to help all teachers understand the disciplinary literacy needs of their subject, and to support learners to understand the disciplinary literacy of their subjects. Because if we were to get disciplinary literacy right for a huge number of pupils, the benefits would be out of all proportion to the collective effort it would demand. So that's quoting Alex Quigley from the Education Endowment Fund at the end of last year. So it's about understanding the patterns and understanding how we can best support EAL learners in the language patterns that happen at a secondary school level. I think primary school, many of the teachers do this well in primary school, but at a secondary school level, when you get to different teachers, it's maybe not addressed in the same way. Then finally, I'm just going to say that we have a disciplinary literacy symposium here in Bath on the 26th and 27th of June, and all teachers are invited, all teachers and academics are invited, to researchers, professional development, parents, anybody that wants to come is invited to the symposium. And it aims to bring together world-leading experts in disciplinary literacy who are going to be talking about history, design technology, heritage languages, and a whole range of different topics with respect to disciplinary literacy. So these are the speakers who will be talking at the symposium in June. We'll send information. I'll send this to Graham and I can share it with everybody at a later date. But it's going to be sort of a groundbreaking focus on disciplinary literacy in secondary school contexts. So that's it. There's more details available. I can put the link to our project in the chat. But thank you. If you have any questions, I would be more than happy to answer those at the end. So thank you.
Thank you, Gail. I think as I think I intimated in introducing you, we generally don't pay enough attention to the needs of more advanced EAL learners. When we do pay attention to them, we also help all the other learners, because academic literacy is nobody's first language.
Yeah.
All
John Swales said that. He passed away recently, didn't he? Talking about academic literacy being nobody's first language.
It's you have to work quite hard to acquire it. So to have help in acquiring it, I think, is really, really useful. So thank you very much for that, Gail. If we can move on now to St George's Catholic School in Taunton, which I visited actually quite recently. I hadn't realised there were any pupils in Taunton. You don't think about Taunton that way, but when you get there, you find it's a bit different. And St George's is actually now 70% EAL. So the EAL provision has to be right, because it's the overwhelming majority of their pupils. And it is very good indeed, which is why it has a gold award. So Karen, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, so my name is Karen Roberts. I am the EAL lead at St George's Catholic School, which is a single form entry primary school in Taunton. And as Graham said, we have a high proportion of EAL pupils. So we have around 70% of EAL pupils now, which is significantly higher than other schools in Taunton and in Somerset. And so we wanted to go for the EAL Quality Award, really to recognise the work that we do with the EAL pupils and see it as a strength of our school, especially in Taunton. So Graham asked if we could share some of what we learnt from going through the process of applying for the EAL award. And so when we went through the process, I found that there were some steps we could immediately put into place to sharpen up our practice. For example, carrying out a survey with the parents was an easy one to straight away get the voice of parents. And yeah, there was a few things like that that we just sort of sharpened up and gathered the information. And even that was helpful. And then it also gave us a few more items to put onto our action plan of what to do next and where to go next with our EAL learners. So that was useful for us. But we were very pleased to get the Gold Award. And so Graham's just asked us to share a little bit about what got our school to gold. So I'm just going to share my screen now. Share from the beginning. Okay, so as I've said, we're a very diverse primary school. In 2011, we did have 22% EAL pupils. So we have had a history of having a higher proportion of EAL pupils than other schools in the area, but it has significantly grown, as I said, to 70% now. But what that means is we want our school to look diverse, to celebrate the diversity in the school, so that the books that we have, the resources that we use, the displays that are on display reflect the diversity in the school. Then the second feature is really that everyone is on board. You know, it's not just my job to look after the EAL pupils, it is across the school. And so we have a flyer that we use for new members of staff, which is really kind of just the quick what you need to know about working in an EAL school. So just the kind of our picture and what we're doing with all EAL pupils, some strategies to help those who are newer to English or more advanced. So just so that anyone starting knows our stance on EAL. Then teachers, they have the training. We've had an inset, a Twilight inset training on EAL, so they've had the latest sort of research and best practice. Teaching assistants, we make sure they have the opportunity to go on a course about supporting learners of EAL. The senior leadership team are thinking about EAL and where it is on their action plan. The governors of the school have a good awareness of the EAL learners and how best to support them. We had a parent and family support advisor who really went above and beyond to support an EAL family, recognising some of the concerns they might have had, for example, with their pupil being identified as autistic. That was a bit culturally a bit of a barrier, and also being able to ask for help in needing the food bank, but the PFSA was able to go above and beyond those barriers to support the family. And then really EAL pupils involved in all aspects of school life. They're involved in trips and residentials and sports teams, and their playground leaders and their chaplains, and teachers take their time to make sure that parents have the information that's needed to make sure the pupils are involved in those things. And yeah, parents know that they can attend school events, they can attend assemblies, they know the importance of parents' evenings, and they've been able to contribute their information for projects in the school. They've been able to contribute their knowledge. We have parents who, for example, there's a team of Filipino parents that create a kind of noodle bar for the school fair, so that they're involved in fundraising for the school as well. So it goes across the board, and my role as EAL lead in the school, I try to make sure I'm up to date with the latest research. I go on courses where I can, I read blogs, I get involved in networking events. And then that means that I can work with the teachers, with the TAs, have informal conversations about pupils, work with the SENCO when, you know, is it EAL, is it SEN? In regular TA meetings, then I can talk about pupils and strategies that will help. And so I think that's one element, that everyone's on board. And then yeah, because we've had EAL pupils for a time, I think one thing we've done is we've made sure we've adopted strategies that are beneficial to EAL learners. And as we know, if it's good for EAL learners, it's going to be good for all learners. And so one example of that is a consistency of teaching that Graham really liked, making sure that input is delivered with key visuals or concrete examples or multisensory input. And then there's structured talk opportunities, so pupils can explore the learning through their talking before they go on to writing. And then also in classes, there's labelled resources, there's visual timetables. The school's developed its own knowledge organisers for the different subjects. So the vocabulary that's being developed, the knowledge that's being developed is all spelled out. And vocabulary is a really key part of displays in classroom to really boost the vocabulary of pupils. And then things like the literacy strategy that has been adopted is one where grammatical elements are really made explicit so that pupils can learn how to use them and then apply them to other subjects as well. So yeah, part of what we do is that hopefully all of the teaching is good for EL learners and therefore good for all. But we don't just assume that, okay, all the EL learners will be fine in this school, no need to do anything else. So we also have procedures in place to make sure that extra support for EL learners can be provided. So that's sort of from the arrival procedure, how they settle into the classroom, doing an initial language assessment after a couple of weeks to see their language levels, their proficiency in speaking and listening, and then reading and writing as well. And then that assessment can lead to strategies being shared with teachers, next steps being shared with teachers. And then on an ongoing basis in the pupil progress meetings, EAL is pulled out, and me liaising with the teachers, then we can work out what interventions will be useful for pupils. So a lot of my time is delivering interventions to individuals and small groups based on the needs that are identified. So sometimes it might be a pupil's arrived and doesn't know the English alphabet system, so we can teach that. It could be kind of the tier 2 vocabulary that they need to know to apply across the different subjects. It could be understanding word problems in maths. It could be reading. So we've got lots of different interventions that I can do with different ages, speaking and listening games with the younger children. It's not a one size fits all. It's not all EAL pupils will go through, you know, this set of interventions. So it's what's going to support them in the classroom. And then I can keep records of the progress that pupils are making against those targets, and keep good records of the languages and when pupils arrived and things like that. And then, you know, one thing that Graham noticed we do is for pupils who have arrived within the country in the last year, when it gets to autumn, I heard this from someone else, they said, you know, it gets a bit strange at the end of October when there's Halloween and there's bonfire night and there's a lot of sort of strange going on sort of around. And so I have the opportunity to take the pupils aside if they've arrived in the country within the last year and just talk it through what's happening in Britain. You know, why are some children celebrating Halloween? What does that look like? Why are there fireworks going off? And what's that all about? And that can be really helpful for some pupils when they've come from countries that haven't experienced that, or if they're refugees from countries that have experienced loud noises being much scarier, then we can talk about it before it happens. And so hopefully in that way, the EAL pupils, they're getting a good academic experience, but they're also having a bit more individual attention where needed as well. That's all from me.
Thank you very much, Carol. Just going to find my bit. So we're on questions and thanks. I was very pleased to see your course certificate in your presentation on our EAL and SEND, distinguishing the different schools, which is actually by far the most successful course we've ever run. There's far more people doing it. Not sure whether I'm pleased about that or not, but I'm pleased that people do it because it's a very good course. And on that note, yeah, thank you very much, Sarah, as well, for mentioning the EAL handbook. which I know lots of people find very, very useful. In terms of the questions, we don't have a lot, but we have got one very good one, which I have a strong view on, but I'll let the presenters say something first. Judith, how do you assess students to place them at the right level? Have you created your own assessment to fit the Bell Foundation framework? Let's go first.
I can go first. I don't mind. We at St Andrews use Cambridge English exam papers, which we give after an initial assessment. So we first have a conversation. We have a few minutes conversation with the pupil to see where they're at with their proficiency, and then we decide which paper we're going to give them. We have got high expectations, but also we try and be realistic. So sometimes we mix a preliminary English test with the first certificate of English, or with an advanced paper, or we mix and match, and then that it will inform us of their abilities, and then what we do is it depends for every pupil really, but yeah, the Bell Foundation assessment framework will help me make a decision and see where the next what the next steps are, or what targets we're going to set for that term. We don't set more than 2 or 3 targets. Well, realistically, we might set 4 or 5, but we don't expect them to make a huge progress because we're in a prep school, so we have got short terms, and we only see them in they don't take Latin at St Andrews, so they come for EAL lessons where we then support them in different ways. But yeah, we try and be realistic, but that's how we do it at St Andrews.
So for me, if it's a new student that's arrived, I use so I'm in Somerset, so Somerset Council has the Ethnic Minority Achievement Service, who have developed various resources to support assessment, and so they have an EAL skills framework, which has the descriptors of the proficiencies, and I tend to do it a bit more informally, I think, and use conversation and then different assessment tools just to ascertain. So for example, I might use the Renfrew action picture test as a speaking tool, which then helps me to identify their spoken level, and then it's more of a kind of best fit according to the grid of their proficiency. And similar with reading, I've got materials that have been developed by the Ethnic Minority Achievement Service in my council. So that's kind of their initial language assessment that I use to give next steps or get an idea of what strategies might be helpful to them, to the class. After that, a lot of what they do is just the general schools assessment procedures that they do, and then they're falling behind, and then it's more very individualized what the targets are and how we work towards it and show progress towards that.
I'm not involved in assessing, so I'm not going to comment on that. You're muted, Graham.
Thanks, Gail. About 6 years ago, a school in Ipswich asked us to go and work once a week for 6 weeks, day a week, with their Key Stage 1 teachers. They asked us to go and work with them on effective strategies in classroom. It turned out when we got there that what the teachers really wanted was an EAL framework that works and is helpful. the Bell Foundation is a wonderful, thorough piece of work, but it's very long. And that's why many people struggle with it. So we wrote with these two teachers a 3 sides of A4 Key Stage 1 assessment framework that also includes very clearly the strategies you need to develop particular skills. If you want a copy of it, just email us at the AL Academy. We don't charge for it, and we'll send it to you. And a couple of years after that, one of the people who runs one of our online courses, who also works at a school in Taunton, has more EAL expertise than people would think. At least 2 schools I know are very good at it. Wrote a Key Stage 2 version of that. And again, that if you just contact us, we can send you that for free. I think they're both very, very succinct but very effective pieces of work that take some of the hard work out of the EAL assessment, actually, because they're clear and because they're related to classroom strategies. Right, unless there's a late question in, can't see any more questions. Unless someone waves to put something in the chat, I think I can't see anything there. It's probably time to thank all 3 of our presenters for such clear, helpful, lucid presentations. Thank you all for coming. To apologise for it being a bit messy today, but that's because the person who normally does all of the IT end of these webinars fell down the stairs at her house at about 10 to 4. So I've taken over, and apologies for the things that might not have worked as smoothly as they should have. It's nice to see you all. There will be, we have been recording it, so we should be able to send you something, or at least we'll send you a notification of it being on our YouTube channel. So thanks very much. Hope to see you at the next webinar, which my guess is will be in the autumn. Okay, bye.